And you are podcasting with Gary DeMar. Let's figure things out.
My name is Gary DeMar, and this is Bible Prophecy Under the Microscope. And there's a whole lot going on in the world today that I'd like to discuss in this particular episode. And what I'm about to say isn't anything new in terms of what I've said before, but for those who may be listening to this series for the first time, it may be new to you, and that's a good thing. We are here to learn together, and maybe if I present something that's different from what you've been told, that's okay. We need to be Bereans. I know this is kind of a common thing, the Berean thing again, search the scriptures daily to see whether these things are so, but that's what we're called on to do. And the Apostle Paul, who was the Apostle Paul, who met Jesus on the road to Damascus, was still kind of, put in the interpretive dock, if you will, to make his case biblically. And I think it's important today that we do the same. What does the Bible say about these things? And a couple of items that I'd like to discuss. The first one is the role that Israel plays in end times Bible prophecy. And it is a big deal among so many prophecy writers and commentators. It is the essence of their position, going all the way back to late great planet Earth, where Hal Lindsey made the comment, and I've mentioned this before, that Israel becoming a nation again in 1948, May 15th of 1948. It was a fulfillment of Bible prophecy. Then he went to Matthew chapter 24, verse 34, says, "This generation will not pass away until all these things take place." Generation was 40 years. And based upon that, sometime between 1948 and 1988, the rapture of the church would take place, the rise of the Antichrist, making a deal with the Jews, breaking the deal, breaking the covenant, all hell breaks loose, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is supposedly based upon Daniel chapter 9, verses 24 through 27. This is old news. Now, again, some of you may be listening to this and are saying, well, this is the way it is. I mean, this is what I've heard this all my life. Israel becoming a nation again is a significant prophetic matter. And I would challenge you, in fact, I would challenge anyone who makes that claim to make the case from the New Testament. The New Testament does not say anything about Israel becoming a nation again. Nothing. And there is certainly ample opportunity to make that case. In the Olivet Discourse, I know people try to squeeze out this belief that the fig tree, the budding of the fig tree, is a fulfillment of Bible prophecy, and that's Israel becoming a nation again. I'm just sorry, folks, but that just isn't the case. Even many dispensationalists have given up on that interpretation, because if the fig tree is Israel in Matthew chapter 24, then Israel is the fig tree in Matthew chapter 21, and Jesus says there'll never be fruit on this tree again. I think Jesus was making a simple analogy in Matthew chapter 24. You've seen all these signs that are going to take place. I'm telling you, all of these things will take place before this generation passes away. And on the basis of that, you will note that the prediction I'm giving you about the destruction of the temple, the judgment upon Jerusalem, setting the city on fire. You can see that in Matthew chapter 22. That will be fulfilled before your generation passes away. And what we have happening today is prophecy writers, prophecy prognosticators going out there and taking all of those passages, ripping them out of their historical context, and then placing them in what's happening in the world today. And these aren't the first people to do this. As I mentioned, Lindsay's book, 1970. So you're looking at, what is that, 54 years ago. This is what Lindsay said. And here we are, 2024, and people say, oh, but it's different now. Everything's happening in the world. So let me go over this again. I did discuss this a little bit with Max Lucado, and he made the comment that Israel becoming a nation again was a super sign. This was this wording that Tim LaHaye used in one of his books, and I dealt with this in my book, Left Behind, Separating Fact from Fiction, that this is a super sign. And I mentioned that if you're a dispensational premillennialist, you believe in a pre-tribulational rapture, there are no signs preceding the rapture of the church. And I mentioned this in the Max Lucado episode number 7. I made this point, and I've made it over and over and over again. My book, 10 Prophecy Myths, Exposed and Answered, that book is available at American Vision. I deal with this in specific detail, quoting from dispensationalists, those who believe in a pre-trib rapture, who will tell you there are no signs. So if Israel becoming a nation again in 1948 is a sign, then it goes against their whole system. Jonathan Cahn, who has a message called Prophetic Warning for America, and I'm all for prophetic warnings regarding America. There's no doubt about that. But I want to play you this portion from his talk to show you, again, these prophecy writers are making a huge mistake in making Israel the basis of their prophetic position. It just isn't the case, and I believe it's both exegetically contrary to the Bible and also, I think, very dangerous.
Among the most important signs of the times right now in the end time, number one that tells you where you are is the rebirth of the nation of Israel, the regathering of his people from the ends of the earth, the restoration to Jerusalem. And the other is the great apostasy, the great falling away that we are watching in our culture every day, in Western civilization affecting the world. The Bible said both of these would take place, both have taken place and are happening. We are living in the generation that has witnessed the coming back of the nation of Israel, the return of Israel to Jerusalem, which has to happen for Messiah, Jesus, to come again, and that is witnessing the great apostasy.
So we're looking at the reestablishment of Israel, the Jerusalem capital, and so forth. And this is supposed to be the sign of the end, along with this great apostasy. And again, where in Scripture does it say anything about Israel becoming a nation again? Now, the Old Testament specifically states that Israel became a nation again. They came back from captivity. They became a nation again. That's what the books of Ezra and Nehemiah are all about. The very fact that Israel was a nation in the first century tells you that they were a nation again. So what we need is something within the New Testament to tell us that that Israel returning to their land sometime in the future is a sign of the end times. And there is nothing in the New Testament that says this. And it's amazing to me that people, I hate to say fall for this, but give me a verse. That's what I'm looking for. Give me a verse that says this. It's just like the rapture of the church. Give me a verse that says that the church is going to be taken off the earth before, during, or after a 7-year period. There is no verse in the Bible that says this. Give me a verse from the New Testament that says that the temple is going to be rebuilt. There is no verse in the New Testament that says the temple is going to be rebuilt. The Old Testament talks about the temple being rebuilt, and sure enough, the temple was rebuilt. During the time of Jesus in John chapter 2, Jesus said that, destroy this temple, and in 3 days I'll raise it up again. And of course, his crowd thought, well, wait a minute, this temple has, been in the reestablishment, rebuilding phase. Of course, Jesus was talking about the temple of his body. And that's the key to this. Jesus is the key to Bible prophecy, not Israel. Israel becoming a nation again is not within God's prophetic plan. Now, does that mean that the Jews are cast out as no longer part of the covenant? All they have to do is embrace Jesus as the promised Messiah. This was the same requirement in the New Testament. All you have to do is read the book of Acts, read Paul's epistles. This was something that Jews during that time period showed their allegiance to God and through the person and work of Jesus Christ. That's what, in fact, the New Testament is all about. That's what the book of Acts describes. And you see a split within the Jewish community. Some people believed and some people didn't. Thousands and thousands of Jews came to Christ during the book of Acts, fulfillment of Bible prophecy. Acts chapter 2, verse 5. There were those in Jerusalem from every nation under heaven, heard the gospel. The gospel had gone out to the diaspora, to the oikumene, to the place where the Jews were scattered. Some of them still there. Some of them who had decided to stay in diaspora. They were Jews all over the place during that period of time. The gospel had gone out to the Jew first, and then the Greek. And then we read in Colossians 1:23 that there were that the gospel had been preached to all creation under heaven. Israel had heard the gospel. It wasn't a rebuilt temple that was necessary. It wasn't the Jews returning to the land. Think of this. If this is what Jonathan Cahn and others are saying, this part of Bible prophecy, it seems to me that as the gospel went out to the oikumene, to the inhabited earth, to the Roman Empire, to the political boundaries of the Roman Empire, the same boundaries that Luke mentions in Luke chapter 2, verse 1, that a decree went out from Caesar Augustus as the whole world be taxed. The word world there is oikumene, same word that's used in Matthew 24:14. That the gospel, why don't we have Paul on his missionary journey calling back the Jews to Jerusalem? Why didn't he do this? There's nothing in any of his messages that speaks of this. It's beyond me that these guys don't get this, but that's the essence of the debate here, and that is, why didn't Paul preach this as Jonathan Cahn does? Did he miss something here? Why is Jonathan Cahn and all these others who see modern day Israel today the focus of Bible prophecy and Jews returning to the land of Israel as a fulfillment of Bible prophecy? No one in the New Testament was preaching that. They have to go back to the Old Testament to find this. And then, sure enough, after the captivity, what happened? The Israelites returned to the land. They rebuilt the city. They rebuilt the temple. The fact that the temple was defiled during the Maccabean period tells you that the temple had in fact been rebuilt. And there's nothing in the New Testament that says anything about it supposed to happen again. Then Jonathan Cahn mentions the great apostasy. Look, we've had apostasies all the way through church history. We had the Reformation. Here we are coming up here. I'm doing this podcast on October 2nd, 2024. And the Reformation. The Reformation was, in fact, the overturning of a great apostasy, bigger than anything that we're imagining today. And the New Testament also had a great apostasy in the lead up to the destruction of Jerusalem in AD 70. The Apostle John talks about it. There was Apostle Paul talks about it, those who had deserted him. I believe that the antichrists that John mentions, and that's the only two books in the Bible where the word antichrist is used, is in 1 John and 2 John. And who were the antichrists? Those who denied that Jesus had come in the flesh. This was part of the great apostasy. The Apostle John in 1 John chapter 2 states the following: Children, it is the last hour. Audience reference. Who is John talking to? Is he talking to us, or is he talking to the people to whom he wrote this letter? Children, it is the last hour. And just as you heard that Antichrist is coming, even now many antichrists have arisen. From this we know that it is the last hour. Now listen to this from verse 19 of 1 John chapter 2. They went out from us, but they were not really of us. For if they had been of us, they would have remained with us. But they went out in order that it might be shown that they are not of us. But you have an anointing from the Holy One, and you all know. I have not written to you because you do not know the truth, but because you do know it, and because no lie is of the truth. Who is the liar? But the one who denies that Jesus is the Christ. This is the Antichrist, the one who denies the Father and the Son. Here, so John is defining an Antichrist here, someone who denies the Father and the Son. This was a first century exposition of what was taking place. There were those Jews who had entered the church because they did not like the idea that the Gentiles would also be part of the covenant promises made to Israel, rejected the faith and went back to their old religion, to the Jerusalem, to the temple. And in the New Testament, we read that it's the Jerusalem above. It's Zion that's above. It's not earthly Jerusalem. Galatians chapter 4, it's as clear as crystal. It's all over the New Testament. And yet we have people today who are claiming this great apostasy. There is apostasy today. I'm not denying that. But there are millions and millions and tens of millions of Christians around the world. There are churches all over the place. And we will see the failure of false theology like we saw during the time of the Reformation. We as Christians need to be vigilant about this. And I agree with Jonathan Cahn about the sons of Issachar, who understood the times of what Israel should do. Applicationally, for us, we need to understand the times. We need to get busy in dealing with these issues. And there are many people who are dealing with these issues and taking on the political left and the religious left, and the so-called evangelicals out there who don't know what in the world is going on and who have capitulated. And so this is something that has to be dealt with. People like Jonathan Cahn essentially have given up. The only thing that's going to save us is the rapture of the church. The apostasy is inevitable. The destruction of the world is inevitable. The coming of the Antichrist is inevitable, and there's nothing you can do about it. The Bible does not present this to us in this way. Coupled with this is what we're hearing about what's going on in Israel at the moment with Iran, sending missiles in, and what happened in Gaza. And supposedly this is a sign of the end times. And let me repeat, according to the dispensational, pre-tribulational perspective, there are no signs preceding the rapture. The rapture could have taken place anytime over the past 2,000 years. Which would mean you wouldn't have needed Israel becoming a nation again. You wouldn't need missiles and so forth bombing Israel. And we're told with this, and I saw this online and I commented on it. People say, "Oh, Israel is the apple of God's eye. God's going to save Israel." Da 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 da. And I'm thinking, well, wait a minute. So why did he let what happened in Gaza back in October of 2023 happen? If this was God's plan for Israel, why is he letting that happen? And if this is God's plan for Israel, that Israel is going to be saved during the end times, then why is he allowing what's taking place in Iran to take place? And here is something you will hardly ever hear from dispensationalists in a public forum, although they write it in their books, because you have to understand that modern day prophetic speculation of the dispensational kind, and even those who are kind of mid-trib and even post-trib, believe that Israel is going to be going through another Holocaust, where 2/3 of the Jews living in Israel will be slaughtered. This is their view. They believe this. It is based upon Zechariah chapter 13, which I deal with in some of my books. And they don't like to talk about this. In fact, I had a debate with Thomas Ice a number of years ago, and I brought this up. I said, Tommy, this is your view. You talk about Israel, the apple of God's eye, and God's going to, he's going to save Israel again. All Israel is going to be saved and all that. But not before 2/3 of the Jews living in Israel are going to be slaughtered. And his answer to that, to me, was, well, billions more are going to be slaughtered around the world. And I'm thinking, that's your answer? That's the hermeneutic that you're using? This is your end-time position? And when I debated Michael Brown a few years ago, I asked him the same question. I said, Dr. Brown, you're all about Israel, modern-day Israel, being a fulfillment of Bible prophecy, and yet your position teaches, and if it's not you personally, but the end-time position that's most popular today, and he's all about blaming people who don't hold his position as being anti-Semitic because we don't believe his way in terms of fulfilled prophecy. How do you explain the view that 2/3 of the Jews living in Israel during this end time are going to be slaughtered as a fulfillment of Bible prophecy. And he did not have an answer for me on that. And I asked him, I said, send me your answer to this. They have to believe that. And if they don't believe that, then their whole system, goes down. The answer to Zechariah chapter 13 is very simple. I believe that was a prophecy that manifested itself during the period between AD 30 and AD 70. But here's the difference. Jesus gave a prophecy found in Matthew chapter 24, Mark 13, Luke 17, Luke 19, Luke 21. There's a prophecy that said that there was going to be a great tribulation that was going to take place before their generation passed away. And on the basis of that, this is what is going to happen. There'll be, false prophets. There'll be, the great tribulation. There'll be the gospel going into all the world, which did take place. There was the abomination of desolation. It says, when you see the abomination of desolation. And here's the deal. Here's what's different about what these guys are saying. Jesus warned them about what was going to take place, and it could be easily escaped by just getting out of the city of Jerusalem and going to the mountains. Matthew chapter 24. You read the same thing in Luke chapter 21. It could be escaped. There's no telling the Jews in Israel to leave Israel to escape this coming Holocaust. In fact, they get excited about more and more Jews going to Israel as a fulfillment of Bible prophecy. But they don't want to talk about, all Israel is going to be saved, which all actually means all what's left of Israel is going to be saved during the period of the Great Tribulation. This is a dangerous, dangerous prophetic view. First, it goes against Scripture. And Jonathan Kahn makes this point, and it's a very good point. How do you know when you're discerning the time? Go to the Scriptures. I've taken you to the Scriptures to see what's going on today. And so now the next thing is, and it's not just the next thing, this is part of all this as well, and I saw this online. Ezekiel 38 and 39 is a fulfillment of Bible prophecy. And my comment was, really? Where are the horses? Where are the bows and arrows? Where are the shields? Where are the bucklers? Where are the clubs? Where are the chariots in this battle with Iran that's taking place today, and Hezbollah and the Islamic world? Where are all those things? That's what Ezekiel 38 and 39 describe. And don't come to me and say, that was just a description that the people in Ezekiel's day could understand. Why would the people in Ezekiel's day have to understand this when it didn't apply to them? And so the people in Ezekiel's day are confused, and the people today are confused. So you have to make bows and arrows missiles and missile launchers, and you have to make chariots tanks. And you begin to see the craziness of all this, especially from people who claim to interpret the Bible literally. And so Ezekiel 38 and 39 has nothing to do with today. And it's what I find interesting is that it was always Russia, but now Iran's in this. And they'll say, this is modern day Persia. Well, yeah, modern day Persia. Well, it was Ezekiel, in Ezekiel's day, the prophecy was fulfilled during the time of the Persian Empire and what is described in the book of Esther, where Haman, all you have to do is read the book of Esther, Haman chapter 3. Haman wanted to destroy all of the Jews, and God intervened and took out Haman, took out his army. And I discussed this in my book, The Gog and Magog End Time Alliance, where I go through Ezekiel 38 and 39 in detail, showing how this was fulfilled during the time of Esther. It is fulfilled prophecy. And yet what we find with these prophetic speculators today is this is an inevitable battle. And I'm telling you, Israel's not going to be rescued through all of this. Christians aren't going to be raptured out because of all of this. We need to get involved and to stop pushing this false end time theology and get involved and get our political leaders to stop the madness of fueling the flames with sending weapons all around the world, creating wars and sending our young people involved in these wars. This is a tragedy, and it's going to be a dangerous tragedy if we continue to let this type of thing happen. So if you're listening to these people, those end time speculators, you better go back to the Bible and pay attention to whom are the prophecy writers writing. And it amazes me that people who claim to interpret the Bible literally go to Ezekiel 38 and 39 and do just the opposite. And it amazes me also. I would go to Ezekiel chapter 38. I'm going to point out one verse to you and show you something that will demonstrate that the fulfillment took place during that period of time and not some future time. This is from Ezekiel chapter 38, verse 13. Sheba and Dedan and the merchants of Tarshish with all of its villages will say to you, have you come to capture spoil? Have you assembled your company to seize plunder, to carry away silver and gold, to take away cattle and goods, to capture great spoil? First, Sheba, Dedan, and Tarshish, villages. How does that comport with what's taking place in the world today? This is just preposterous to read this particular passage and say this is a fulfillment of Bible prophecy today. No, this was a prophecy about what was going to take place in the near future from Ezekiel's time, and I believe it was fulfilled in the time of the book of Esther and Ezra and Nehemiah. How do I know this? Because the Bible tells me so. Ezra chapter 1. And it's talking about in the first year of Cyrus, king of Persia, in order to fulfill the word of the Lord by the mouth of Jeremiah, the Lord stirred up the spirit of Cyrus, king of Persia, so that he sent a proclamation throughout all his kingdom and also put it in writing, saying, thus says Cyrus, king of Persia, the Lord, the God of heaven, has given me all the kingdoms of the earth, and he has appointed me to build him a house in Jerusalem, which is in Judah. This is a fulfillment of the prophecies regarding rebuilding the city, the Jews returning to their land after the captivity, and also building the temple. This isn't talking about something in the distant future. You would need something similar to this in the New Testament in order to fulfill the claim that people like Jonathan Cahn are using. Now listen to this next verse. Remember, the Jews are taken off into captivity. God defeats Haman and his armies, and as described in the book of Esther. And so they come back from the captivity, and what do they bring with them? Now remember the passage out of Ezekiel 38:13. Gold, silver, cattle, and goods. Ezra chapter 1, verse 4. So what did they bring back? What did the survivors bring back from the captivity? And every survivor, at whatever place he may live, let the men of that place support him with silver and gold, with goods and cattle, together with a free will offering for the house of God, which is in Jerusalem. And so God blessed the survivors and had the people in the nation surrounding Israel laden them down with gold, silver, cattle, and goods to fulfill what God had promised to Israel. This isn't describing something in the distant future. It is describing what the prophecy in Ezekiel 38:13 was all about. It's not about modern day Russia. It was about what was taking place in that generation. If you can get your mind around this, it will completely change your perspective on Bible prophecy. It might be painful for you, and that's okay. It was painful for me and painful for lots of other people who came to the truth of this. Let the Bible speak for itself. Just like the Bereans, search the scriptures daily to see whether what Jonathan Cahn is saying. There are lots of recommendations that I can make for this. My book, Last Days Madness, Wars and Rumors of Wars, and many other books. Go to AmericanVision.org, and you will get a better perspective. But put me to the test as well. Search the scriptures daily to see whether these things are so.
Thanks for podcasting with Gary DeMar. Please subscribe and share this with anyone you think really needs to hear it.